Hi everyone, it's Heidi from flutterbyheidi.co.uk. I'm Heidi Smith. I'm an independent Stampin' Up! Demonstrator based in the United Kingdom, and today I'm working with the fabulous Share a Milkshake bundle along with some Fancy Flora DSP to give you my standard kind of card size 4-fold card. So if you remember, a few weeks ago I brought you the sort of 6x6 version, and a few people asked if I could do a smaller version, so this is what we've worked on. So here we go, the Share a Milkshake. It's great fun. I mean, I know it was, you've got the Valentine in there, but you've got lots of other little bits and pieces that could be used for all sorts of occasions. Life is Sweet with You is just lovely for anyone anyway. Celebrate, really useful. And you know, you're the cherry on top. Yeah, there are so many ways you can use this, and it comes with, or you can buy it with, coordinating dies which make this gorgeous sort of sugar waffle cone. You can see the texture that's in there, dies to cut out all the various images, and yeah, so let's get started on what we're going to create. I haven't used all of the accent dies with this one, you know, just kind of, you know, playing it by ear. But yeah, so go back to the card itself then. So you open up, you've got more milkshakes on the inside. You could decorate those inside panels if you want. You see that one on the front, and hopefully you can see the shine on there to make the glass. And then we've got a little sundae in there as well. And the nice thing is that what that actually does, because that drops down, it will actually stand up as well. You know, sometimes 4-fold cards, you know, I always design them so that they will actually stand, because I think otherwise it sort of doesn't quite kind of give the right effect. And I've just used a little bit of the DSP on the side here. Now, if you wanted to not have your sentiment on show, just pop a panel on the reverse, and of basic white, and you'll soon get some lots of space to write a note as well. So there's our card. Let's get stamping. Other things I've used the Painted Texture 3D folder for this texture panel here, and of course I've used, I haven't actually used acetate, but you could use acetate, or I'm going to show you the packing tape technique as well on there. So first things first then, there's some stamping we need to do. We need to do some stamping on the inside of our card. We also want to stamp our various bits and pieces. There we go, there's my scrap. You can see already stamped on there, so we can use the reverse. So we want to stamp our images here, our kind of ice cream as well. So this is our inside panel, so this is where we want to stamp our or milkshake rather. Okay, so I'm going to come in a little bit from the left hand side. Now with these, what I've found best is if you do the detailed image first and then do the layer over the top. So I'm just going to pop that detail there. I'm using Petal Pink. I'm actually going to stamp off with that Petal Pink as well, just onto a scrap, just to give a really sort of subtle effect. And then I'm going to use some stamped off Calypso Coral for the kind of foam. Is it foam on top of a milkshake? Is the head on a pint of beer? I'm not sure. So Calypso Coral, I'm just going to stamp it off and just add that over the top there. And then we can add you can always add the straw if you want to. So that's going to be our panel, and I'm just going to add a couple of strips of DSP. This is a great card for using up those scraps of DSP. The downside of 6x6, much as I like it for its convenience, is obviously that you end up, if you've done a card front, you end up with kind of little scraps and bits and pieces of paper. So this one is perfect for using those little scraps up, getting the most out of your stash. So these are just 1 centimetre by 10 centimetres, and the Fancy Flora DSP that I've used, which I haven't actually shown you. Let me show you that. And so it's kind of an overall, to me, more of a kind of texture rather than, you know, sort of really solid florals. So here it is. So you've got some more solid florals, but on the reverse you've just got those textures. Some of these, the sort of browns and greens, I'm not so keen on, but there is so much that I do love. I love this particular one. I love that side. I love these blues and purples. Lovely. Now these to me are kind of ice creamy colours. I'm not sure quite what flavours they'd be. Maybe blueberry, you know, it's kind of that sort of, you know, and pistachio for the green maybe, or mint choc chip if you added a bit of brown of the soft suede in. So there we go, there's our petal pink. I love this one, sort of calypso coral and petal pink. Again, sort of lovely, just, you know, painted, you know, taken from the artists have actually sort of literally photographed the paintings. So that's the inside of our card. So I'm going to leave that to one side, do my detail of my milkshake. So I'm just going to stamp the detail. Use the stamping pierce mat to get a really good impression. I'm stamping onto a pad of paper, so that does give us some kind of resistance, if you like. Now with this, don't forget, if you're using the same colour, stamp off first to get that lighter shade, because otherwise when you stamp over it, it's just going to be exactly the same colour as before and you're not going to get that detailed effect. Now what I've done is I'm going to stamp my foam in Calypso Coral, and then for the little bowl and for the ice cream cone in the front, I'm going to do it in Calypso Coral and Calypso Coral Stamped Off. Saves a little bit on the cleaning. Give it a quick clean, and then I'm going to have a bit of pistachio. So I'm going to use my soft sea foam and stamp that as well. So I've got sort of, you know, 3 different ones that I can use. Then I'm going to stamp my little bowl, and I'm going to use some smoky slate. And you can just use the solid outline if you want, but I'm going to try it with the detail. So there's my detail for the bowl. So again, I'm going to grab my scrap paper, stamp it off, and then line that up over the top. I wanted to do this in silver because, you know, it kind of, I guess, I mean, even now I have to say, if I've been to an ice cream parlour in Germany, they still kind of use these stainless steel bowls. So I think that's a bit of fun. And then finally, I think my last little bit of stamping, 2 little bits left. We're going to stamp our sentiment, and we also want to stamp the cherry. So I have gone for cherry cobbler, and I'm just going to stamp it and have it ready and available to die cut out in case my one that I stamp on doesn't come out very well. So you see in here where I've stamped it just over the top, that's fine, but if it didn't work out quite so well, I might want to put an extra one on there as well. And then the straw is our last little bit, again with our soft sea foam. Same as before, we want to make sure that we do our detail first, then do the solid, just stamp that off on our scrap and line it up, and there's our little straw as well. So I'm kind of using the same colour palette throughout. I'm going to do some stamping on our panel. So this is our, we've got 2 panels which we're going to have on our card. So we want a panel for the front here that you'll see that I've got in soft sea foam. This larger panel at the top here, I'll give you the measurements in a moment. Those are, we're going to put that through with our embossing folder. And so the embossing folder I've used is actually this one here, Painted Textures, great embossing folder that gives a lovely, lovely effect. So with this one, first of all, for the stamping, I'm just going to use the same one I've used here. Make sure it is clean. You don't want to contaminate, particularly with these lighter coloured ones. So I'm just going to, sizes. So this is 6 by 6.5 centimetres. I've put the dimensions in inches. I haven't worked them out yet. I will put the dimensions in inches in the description box below. So I'm just going to create a little bit of background. Nothing desperately exciting. There we go, just adds a little bit of texture without texture. Okay. going to stamp the panel for the inside. This is 6 by 6.5 centimetres, and this one I found I was struggling to line it up. Not line it up exactly, but kind of, I was just getting it a little bit skewiff. So I'm going to do my bowl first to get that fairly square. Then I'm going to add my detail. Whereas with the others, I found it was definitely better to do it with the detail first. With this one, there we go. I was just struggling a little bit more. I'm going to put my petal pink in there. Probably just got a nice shot of the top of my head. And let's do our cherry on the top as well. And so just in case we make it a bit skewiff. So let's really make sure it's really inked up well. There we go. And I'm going to come in and just stamp very delicately with some petal pink those clouds. They're not clouds, they're the top of the milkshake, but I just thought they were a bit of fun. There we go. So that's our panel for the inside. That's going to be our panel for the front as the background. Let's clear the decks and let's get some die cutting done. So you're going to want a scrap of crumb cake, which I'm going to use for my cone. We've got the die here to cut out all of these various bits, and I'm just popping a piece of tape to keep those on the edge. And to get that glossy effect, all I'm doing is sticking a piece of ordinary wide sellotape over the top there, like so. And if it overhangs, just trim away or fold it underneath, like so, just to stop your scissors getting too gluey, like so. My bowl I don't need to cut out because I've stamped it, silly me. I'm going to add my straw die and all my other little pieces, so my cherry. Now when you're lining up the cherry die, what I would suggest is that you kind of take that little release hole at the top and line that up just with the top of the stalk. You just kind of, and it'll suddenly go dark once it's in place. And then with these I tend to line at the bottom edge first and then up a little bit. So let's go get some die cutting done. Back in a moment. So we've got our glass with our foam and our straw. And I've got 3 little scoops. I've got a cherry, and then I've also got my cone as well here. So the cone is already embossed scored as well, so all you need to do is just fold it over on those score lines like so. So that's going to create our little waffle cone, and to secure that I just added a little bit of adhesive on the inside to hold that in place, a bit of seal. And I found it easiest to add some Tombow on the bottom of these, and I literally just ran it on the edge and then took my cone, kind of popped them in from the bottom upwards, just kind of, you can just see they're angling them slightly as I went along to give that effect. To glue this into place, the best way to do that is just to add a little bit of adhesive to the bottom. It takes a little bit longer obviously to dry because of the fact it's going onto that sellotape. But you'll see from this here that we're going to add it on with some dimensionals actually. That's what I actually did. Let me grab my mini dimensionals. About to say, just hold that in place. To kind of position it. And once you're happy with where you think it's going to be, just flip and add dimensionals across that join. You don't want to keep them too high up, and you want to make sure your little slit is uncovered at this point as well, because you're going to come in from the front, pop that through, like so, and then you can just stick another dimensional once it's in place. And then add another dimensional or two further down. I'm going to use my larger dimensionals. One here and one here. And don't put them on the top part, because when you come to construct your card, that's actually going to overhang the edge. So those are two of our kind of design elements. We've got our inner panel and our front panel. You can add your cherry as a 3D if you want to. My piece of soft sea foam for the front is 7.5 by 7.5 centimetres. So very straightforward. This one, it doesn't matter whether it lines up. And being a 3D fold, you get real texture on that. So decide which side you prefer, because they obviously look slightly different. But this one looks great either way. I'm going to have it that way. And then I'm going to add my waffle cone onto the top there. And again, you could add as many of those scoops of ice cream as you want. So there's my other panel. This panel here is for the bottom. So I'm just going to add that onto there as well. As I said, because it's a little bit more tricky to get it to glue to the front, just securing it on the back with dimensionals means you're not going to lose anything. And just line that up with the bottom, and you'll see it's just going to pop over the top like so. Okay, so on to actually making our card. So I've got a variety of pieces of cardstock here. So what we've got is we've got a base, and then I add these 4 flaps on. So I'm going to need my trimmer, so we'll pop those push those aside. Then we can add our layer on the back. That gives it a bit of stability, and it also covers up those flap joins. And then we can add our panel onto the front, which we've already stamped and added our DSP to it as well. So let's get on with these dimensions. You're going to need your trimmer and the card base to start off with. I'm going to use Petal Pink, and that is 14.5 by 10.5. The layer for the back, I'm going to add some Calypso Coral. You could use the same colour if you wanted to. And that is 10.3 by 14.3, so just a couple of millimetres smaller. So let's go round in orientation. So my first flap, the top left flap, that is 8 by 9 centimetres. It is 8 by 9 centimetres, and you're going to score on that long edge at 1 centimetre. My second piece that I've got here is 7.5 by 3.5, so 7.5 by 3.5. Again, score at 1 centimetre. Bottom right flap, so this is 6.5 by 8 centimetres, so 6.5 by 8, and again we're going to score just at 1 centimetre on that long edge. And then the final piece for that bottom left corner, panel 4, is 9 by 2.5 centimetres. So again, we're just going to score that at 1 centimetre. Like so. I've then got some scraps of DSP as well for those layers. So I've got one that is 6 by 3, and another piece, that long skinny piece, which is 7.5 by 2 centimetres. I've got a scrap of Calypso Coral here to stamp my sentiment, because I've just realised I haven't done that. So I'm going to stamp my sentiment on the bottom of this piece of card, leaving a gap up each side. I'm just going to trim that to around about 1.5 centimetres. There we go, like so. And then again I want a piece of my Calypso coral that is again about 1.5 centimetres wide. So around about the same width. But just an offcut, so it doesn't have to be precise for this. And all I'm going to do now is just come in and cut the ends off. And I'm going to just do the same by just lining it up against that piece. So that way you know that your angle is going to be the same, and then you can just offset it slightly like so to create our banner. So I'm going to use a bit of Tombow to hold it in place, and then we'll stick a couple of dimensionals on the back there as well. Yep. So there's my sentiment. Okay, so now we're on to the kind of construction. First thing we want to do is with each of those little tabs, we want to just trim those down slightly and then give them a good burnish with our bone folder. The tabs will look slightly bigger when you do it in inches. Obviously I'm using 1 centimetre, and obviously 1/2 inch is just slightly wider, but you're not going to see them anyway. And trimming the tabs I find just makes it just a little bit neater. So I'm going to add these to my card base now. Up to you entirely, obviously, whatever your preference is. I find it's easier to add them with Tombow, as long as you're not overly generous with it. Just because it gives you a little bit of wiggle room. And you can see I'm just folding that around and then burnishing on the back. So then we're going to do our top right. So this is panel number 2. Now if you do find when you've done this you've got any glue that's kind of oozed on the inside of the flap, then just take your embossing buddy, which comes in the kit with the tray and the tweezers, and just rub that over it, and that will get rid of any stickiness that you've got there. I had to do that with my template, so as you know, so you can see here it was a little bit tacky, so I've just added some embossing buddy there. So again, just take our card and fold that around. And obviously if you get any oozing on the back, it doesn't matter because that's going to be covered up anyway. Then finally our last little skinny one on the left here. Again, and what I'm doing is I'm just lining that up with the edges of the card as well. Once that's in place, you can then add your panel to the back. As I said, I went for a kind of contrast colour. It makes it easier to show up on the back. And then when you put that in, just having that sort of, it'll be almost like an 1/8 of an inch at most that you'll have. And it just gives a slight border but covers up those pieces. And so now we're ready to finish our construction. So our DSP that we've already cut. So this is 6 by 3 centimetres. Just pop that in place there. And we can add our sentiment. This is our inner panel. Just on the front there. And when we fold that up, we can add our front sort of 3D sundae milkshake. I kind of do think it does remind me of like a sun, you know, kind of one of those exotic sundaes as well that you have. Although I do remember going, oh gosh, many years ago, my pen friend in Germany to the local, on our bikes, through the woods to our local ice cream parlour, where they did do fabulous milkshakes. And they were served just like this, which was great fun. And again, you could obviously add some extra cherries on the inside there if you wanted to. Then just add that, and I think you'll feel that just finishes it off beautifully. So there we have our Share a Milkshake 4-fold card that fits in a standard envelope. I think you call them A2, C6. Anyway, a standard envelope, standard card size. I'll do the measurements in inches, and I'll obviously also do it for US cardstock size as well, so you can have some fun creating. If you'd like to purchase any of the items you've seen today, just pop along to Stampin' Up, and when you come to the checkout, if you select me as your demonstrator, it really does help me, because that means that I can then provide these tutorials free of charge. So thank you for watching. Come back soon. Bye now.